Hello, the world. This is They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. I am Courtney Eck.
And I'm Sadie Eck.
And if you're watching on YouTube and thinking, oh, Sadie's interviewing a recently paroled murderer. Nope, it's just me.
That's so not true.
I just spent a week in New York. I looked insane we're recording this in the morning, and I looked insane about 5 minutes ago because I am just puffy and my old face is not prepared for travel or being in the world or anything. So Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. It's just Courtney. It's not an actual murderer. But luckily it's Sadie's night, so my face will be shown less in this episode on YouTube. And those of you who are listening in your ears, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
So happy to have you.
What are you talking about tonight, Eck?
This is the story of Courtney Eck, the murderer.
Dun, dun, dun. Spent 1 week in New York City and turned into a spree killer.
Luckily, I don't think that's true. Or if it is, we don't know about it yet.
DNA.
This is DNA.
Sorry, go.
This is the bizarre case of Mathis Bachmeier and the murder of James Bradley Wren.
Whoa, Mathis Bachmeier. Okay.
At 1:30 in the morning on July 9th, 1996, firemen were called to the home of Sergeant Mathis Bachmeier, who lived in a nice two-story home on Garden Avenue North in Renton, Washington. By the time firefighters arrived, the house was engulfed in flames. They were eventually able to put out the fire, but the house was a mess. Luckily, no one was home at the time. Bachmeier, who lived alone, told authorities he was out bowling with friends when the fire broke out. Neighbors were the ones who had called for help. As Bachmeier, who was a 25-year veteran for the King County Police Force, sifted through the ashes of his home, he wondered how he could possibly start all over again. He was well liked at work and a popular member of his community. He spent much of his free time bowling and had even won league championships in the past. But Bachmeier wasn't the only person going through the ashes of his home. Fire investigators were there too, trying to learn how the fire had started. Inside the home, they found 5 different spots where they believed an accelerant had been used to start the fire. One was in the basement, one was in the living room, 2 were in the attic, and another was found in the garage. They really wanted the house to burn.
Mm-hmm.
They also found a message to Bachmeier spray painted on the side of the garage that read, quote, "Pigs eat shit. You're dead. Rios lives." Your was spelled Y-O-U-R.
Uh-huh.
It's believed that Rios was referring to an incident that happened in 1988 when Bachmeier shot and killed Guadalupe Rios in the line of duty. According to Bachmeier, he noticed Rios standing near some pumps at an Exxon gas station at 3 a.m. The station was closed and Bachmeier wanted to see what Rios was up to, so he approached him. When Bachmeier got out of his patrol car and started to approach Rios, Bachmeier said that Rios pulled up a rifle and shot at Bachmeier twice.
Gee, wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The bullets hit the patrol car's windshield but missed Bachmeier, who then shot Rios 3 times in the chest.
So he really did get shot at.
That's what Bachmeier said.
But there
were
bullets. There were holes in the windshield. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there a rifle?
Yes.
Okay.
Rios, who was a father of 6 and had a history of mental health issues, but no history of violence, died at the scene. Investigators couldn't determine what Rios was doing at the gas station that night, but believed Bachmeier's story. An inquest panel cleared Bachmeier in the shooting at the time, but investigators wondered if the fire had been set to get revenge in the killing of Rios. Bachmeier said he had received threats from Rios's friends and family in the years since his death, but they had never actually done anything to try and hurt him. As authorities searched the property, they found a pile of household items, including model cars, 2 leather jackets, and a jewelry box lying on the lawn. When authorities asked Bachmeier about these items, he said they were his, but he didn't know how they got outside. When neighbors were questioned about the fire, one said they saw someone who looked just like Bachmeier get on a motorcycle and leave just before the fire started.
Curious.
Bachmeier stuck to his story and said he had been bowling the night of the fire. Suspicious of the scene, investigators asked Bachmeier to take a polygraph test, and he agreed, but the day he was scheduled to take the test, he never showed. As the days and weeks passed, the investigation into the fire continued. Bachmeier was offered to take a leave of absence so he could take care of his house, but he declined, saying he wanted to keep working.
So what's his role again? Bachmeier's a police officer?
Yeah, he's a sergeant in the police force.
Okay.
25-year veteran.
Got it.
A few weeks into the investigation, a fellow police officer and woman that Bachmeier had been dating went to investigators and told them she had found a few valuable prints, bowling trophies, and pig statuettes in one of Bachmeier's garages.
Excuse me?
You heard it correctly.
Pig statuettes.
Pig statuettes. In one of Bachmeier's garages that hadn't been damaged in the fire. When she asked Bachmeier about them, he told her a convoluted story about how they had been stolen in a burglary just a few days before the fire. To get them back, he said he had to pay the burglars $500.
For his precious pig statuettes.
Yes, that are usually in the house. I don't think I actually said that in this paragraph, but they are usually found in the home. And when the girlfriend came over and they were gone and she saw them in the garage, she was like, huh, that's curious.
So they'd been ransomed. He'd gotten them back, but stored them in the garage for extra safekeeping.
Because you know what police officers do when burglars steal from their home?
Pay ransoms.
Pay them to get them back.
To get their pigs and their prints and their, what else?
Bowling trophies.
Bowling trophies.
Yes.
Precious mementos. Precious mementos.
Yes.
Got it. Great.
So he paid the burglars $500. His girlfriend found the story very suspicious. She's also a police officer, right? I mean, not that it takes a police officer to think that this story is strange.
Pretty sure your 7-year-old son would be like, it doesn't add up.
Right.
Burglars don't steal bowling trophies.
No.
Etc.
Right. Yes. Ooh, these pig statuettes are...
Ah, yeah, I got a real good feeling about these. Are these Hummel figurines?
Right.
Is that still a thing? Do people still collect Hummel figurines?
I don't know.
That was like the hottest item. You were like the richest person on the planet in 1997 if you had Hummel figurines.
Yes.
Which I do believe we have a couple in our family. So looking forward to that retirement from our distant aunt.
So his girlfriend found the story very suspicious and decided to tell investigators. As authorities investigated the fire, they noticed it did not look like a fire set by someone seeking revenge. The fires that were set had taken time to do so. It wasn't like someone ran inside, poured gas all over, and then lit a match and ran. Instead, investigators found what looked like gas cans that someone had attached flares to.
Whoa.
This would allow someone to light the flare and get away before the fire started. These had been left in different spots throughout the house. It might have even delayed the fire long enough for someone to get to a bowling alley. A month would pass as the investigation into the fire continued. In the middle of August, the King County Police Department received a call from a worried mother. Her son, 35-year-old James Bradley, he went by Brad, Wren, had gone missing. His roommate hadn't seen him in days, and he usually called his mom every day, but she also hadn't heard from him. The roommate told authorities that he had last seen Brad getting into the back of a police car on August 10th.
Uh-oh.
Brad had been in a verbal argument with his neighbor that day, and witnesses had called the police because Brad had allegedly been shot in the leg by his roommate, who suffered from mental health issues.
Whoa.
So a few weeks before, in a different fight, Brad and his roommate got into a fight, and the roommate shot Brad in the leg.
Wow. And they remained roommates.
Yes.
Okay.
And so then he got into a fight with somebody else, and the neighbor's like, I'm going to call the police now before somebody gets shot again.
Smart. Good.
Right, yes.
I mean, ish, unless you get this guy.
Yeah. The gunshot wound had shattered Brad's tibia bone, and he was still in a cast healing from the injury.
Oof.
He had to use crutches to get around. The officer who responded to the call that day asked Brad to come into the station with him so he could get a statement. Brad agreed and managed to get himself into the back of the patrol car despite the awkwardness of being on crutches. This was the last time anyone saw him. He never returned home from the police station.
Ugh, what is going to happen? Why? I'm so scared and sad already.
When officers looked into who responded to the call, it was none other than Sergeant Bachmeier. It turns out that 2 other officers had initially responded to the call to break up the fight, but Bachmeier had come on the radio and said he was closer. He would respond to the altercation by himself. Bachmeier told officers that he had picked up Brad, brought him to the station, and then had let him go after getting his statement. He didn't know what happened to him after he left. Brad Wren was born on March 4th, 1961, and at a young age he moved with his family to the Wenatchee Valley in Washington state. Brad graduated from high school in 1979, and a few months later he enlisted with the U.S. Air Force. He was honorably discharged in 1983 after he was in a terrible motorcycle accident that almost took his life. He spent time in a coma and suffered multiple head injuries and memory loss.
Bummer.
After getting out of the Air Force, Brad didn't have an easy life. His traumatic brain injury caused a major change in his personality. He became more aggressive and impulsive, which made it difficult to hold down a job, and he started getting in trouble with the law. He moved from job to job, mostly working as a mechanic. In 1989, Brad pleaded guilty to molesting a 10-year-old girl in Douglas County. He was also charged with abusing a 5-year-old girl, but that case was dismissed.
Ugh.
Brad was originally sentenced to 2 years in prison, but only served 90 days in jail and was required to undergo treatment as a sex offender. After his time in jail, Brad's neighbors said that Brad mostly kept to himself. He would get into the occasional argument with neighbors or roommates, but was described as a quiet guy who spent his time with his dogs that he loved and his pet birds. Before he disappeared, he started to volunteer as a flight instructor for a remote-controlled airplane group, and it was a member of the Marion Moore Plane Club. So on September 1st, 2 months after the house fire, and 1 month since Brad went missing, Bachmeier started telling fellow officers that he had cause to arrest a man named Jesus Hernandez. According to Bachmeier, Hernandez was the one who set fire to his house.
Great. Good job.
Yes. Bachmeier said that Bachmeier had stolen $50,000 worth of drugs from Hernandez in a bust. So then Hernandez burned his house down in retaliation.
Man, what a job that you can just burn your own house down to frame whoever you want for arson. Cool.
Yeah.
That's some logic.
Right.
That is some abuse of power.
Yes.
Wow.
So you know how he found this information out?
Oh, tell me everything.
It just so happened that Brad Wren had been with Hernandez and had helped him start the fire.
Great.
And Brad had even confessed to the crime when he had brought him into the station the day he went missing.
Didn't happen. Did not happen. Doesn't work that way.
1 month since Brad went missing. Now all of a sudden we've got this story.
Yeah.
Bachmeier then went on to tell different versions of the story to both King County and Renton police officers.
And so clearly Brad had not been taken into the station and questioned. There was no record of questioning Brad. He just 1 month later is like, oh, Brad told me when we picked him up for that altercation. And they're like, well, where's the report? Where's Brad? Where's any evidence of this? And he was like,
Yeah, basically.
Right? Assuming,
pretty much. Yes.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. A Renton detective who was in charge of Brad's missing persons case, and I'm just going to also say that I don't think that Brad's disappearance really, he was not the type of guy that they're going to like break doors down trying to find.
Of course.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think he went missing and they were like, did their basic search. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, we're going to trust the 25-year police veteran who says he took a statement and let him go. And then like, who knows what happened to the guy with a traumatic brain injury on crutches. After that, we don't care. So a Renton detective who was in charge of Brad's missing persons case brought Bachmeier in to ask him about the confession. And Bachmeier told him that not only did Brad confess to burning his house down, he even had a confession signed by Brad. According to the written confession, Hernandez and Brad had met in a bar where Hernandez asked Brad to help him break into a cop's house to get back at him for taking his drugs during a bust. He told Brad he would give him $500 for his help. Brad agreed, and they went to Bachmeier's home on July 7th. They broke in and stole the prince and pig statuettes. It'll never not be funny. Because super hardened drug dealer who had $50,000 worth of drugs to steal.
Yeah.
Goes into a nice home.
Yep.
And steals wall hangings and pig statues.
And bowling trophies.
Bowling trophies.
And you know what other people do? They're like, oh, do you want to go break into a cop's house? I'll give you $500, even though I have tens of thousands of dollars that I could give you.
Yes.
Nobody breaks into cops' houses, especially not for $500, and then steals pig statuettes.
No. And I'm not sure when Brad got shot in the leg, if this was, but I kind of picture Brad on like crutches with a terribly shattered leg bone. And I don't know, it might have been after this incident, but I like to put that in my head while I'm imagining this story.
Well, it seems like it would have been right around the same time, right? Because the pig statuettes had just been stolen and returned.
Right.
And right around, like, right before the fire.
Right.
Oh, my God. Yes. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yep. So Bachmeier said he was able to get those back, his precious items back, later that same day. So somehow he knew who did it, and he got to him and got his items back and paid him $500 for the stolen goods.
Yep. Done and done. There you go. Thanks for the transaction. That's the end of that. I'm not going to do anything else about this.
No. So then for some reason, Brad and Hernandez then went back to Bachmeier's 2 days later on July 9th and burned Bachmeier's house down.
Right.
When Bachmeier asked Brad where Hernandez was, Brad said he didn't know, and he was glad he wasn't around because the last time Brad saw Hernandez, he was angry. Brad didn't want to be around him anymore, and Bachmeier asked Brad to help him find Hernandez, but Brad refused, saying that he thought Hernandez might kill him.
This is just bizarre.
Isn't it the strangest
People are
thing?
Bizarre.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't...
He thought he would get away with this.
Because it probably happens all the time, and I'm sure there's other weird-ass stories that he concocted and gotten away with previously.
Yeah. Right?
Obviously.
Yeah.
You know? Like you and I can't begin to rationalize this or wrap our minds around this, but people are not that bright. I think it really just comes down to the fact that people are not that bright. We trust people in positions of power, even though we shouldn't, because they're still people. Yeah. They're just people. They're not smarter than us. They're not superior to us. They just have a job that we have decided puts them in charge of us.
Yes.
That is weird, you guys.
Yeah,
that's very strange.
Weird. Yep. I saw an interview with one of the detectives on the case, and he was asked to describe the case, the story, and he just sat there for a really long time. It was really actually smart on the producer's part. He just kind of sat there looking into the camera, and he said, stupid.
Fever dream. Have you ever had a fever dream?
Yeah.
This was that, but with pig statuettes. So weird.
So weird. So after Brad refused to help because he thought Hernandez was going to kill him, Bachmeier transcribed the confession, and then Brad signed it.
God.
Bachmeier then let Brad go and sat on the confession for a month because it implicated him for stealing the drugs from Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
But as the pressure on Bachmeier increased and it became clear to investigators that he was their prime suspect, not only for the arson case, but in Brad's disappearance as well, Bachmeier turned over the written confession, hoping it would clear him as a suspect.
Goodbye. I have to go now. God, there's so many better ways he could have done this. It would just be so easy for a sergeant to frame somebody or multiple people. It'd be so easy if you took 5 seconds and even stole better stuff from your own self.
Or just put the stuff in a tub and put it in the trunk of your car or something.
Throw it in the trash, whatever.
Yeah,
yes.
Could have probably, if he had just not taken the pig statuettes out of his house, they would have been like, oh well, looks like arson, but we can't figure it out. And it surely isn't going to be the 25-year veteran police officer.
Right.
And if it is, we're so embarrassed by him, we'll just let it go.
Yeah. Or also just like actually arrest these people, bring them in for questioning. Don't just sort of, ta-da, here's a written confession that I just got somehow.
Magically.
Yeah. Without, and I didn't report any of this stuff, but take my word for it.
Yeah.
So weird.
So weird. So when the detective asked Bachmeier if he knew anything about Brad's disappearance, Bachmeier allegedly started laughing and said, quote, "Well, if you find him dead with my business card nailed to his forehead, you'll know to come talk to me."
Oh my God. Wow.
Yep. When detectives looked into Bachmeier's story, they couldn't find any records for Jesus Hernandez in the area.
Oh my.
And were deeply troubled by how Bachmeier had handled Brad's interrogation and confession.
Mm-hmm.
With 25 years' experience, Bachmeier would know better than to take a confession by himself, not to mention one that he was personally involved in.
Bing, 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 bing.
He had no other officers that could corroborate his story, and the only other person who had been there during the confession was now missing.
Bing, 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 bing.
It would also be very unusual for someone who had just confessed to a major crime to be released from custody and not arrested.
I mean, that's what I've been saying.
Yes. So when investigators looked over the signed confession, they noticed that Brad had signed the first 3 pages, but hadn't signed the last page. They showed the signature to Brad's parents, who said it looked like it was his. Investigators also noticed that any time Bachmeier wrote the contraction "you-are," he spelled it Y-O-U-R, just like it had been written on the side of his garage.
Gets you every time.
I know, guys.
Use that punctuation.
That's right.
Put the E at the end. They will find that trend.
They will get you.
They will Zodiac you. Oh, wait. We still don't know who Zodiac is.
I thought we did.
No, ish. Not really.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet got really excited, and all the police who've been working on it for 30 years or however long were like, no, that's an internet thing.
When authorities searched Bachmeier's patrol car, they found very faint traces of blood on the back seat. But when they removed the car seats, they found that a large amount of blood had soaked through the padding of the seat and made its way all the way through the cushion. They also found traces of blood on the door handles of the car and in the front seat. They took samples of the blood from the car and tested it against Brad's father's DNA, and the paternity DNA test came back as a match.
Big surprise.
Yep, the blood had belonged to Brad.
Oof.
When presented with this damning evidence, Bachmeier told police officers that Brad had a bloody nose when he'd gotten into his patrol car from a fight he'd had with his neighbor.
Yep. Gusher. That's a real gusher. Yep.
But forensic experts said it would have taken more than 2 quarts of blood to produce the stains that were found in the car. And this is a life-threatening amount of blood to lose, and far more than you'd experience from a nosebleed.
Big surprise.
If Brad had been bleeding that much, he would have needed medical help urgently.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they needed more evidence against Bachmeier, but they also found drops of Brad's blood on a pair of his shoes. Even though Brad's body was still missing, detectives had the evidence they needed to arrest Bachmeier for the murder of Brad Wren, and he was charged with first-degree murder and arson.
Good.
Bachmeier pleaded not guilty and chose to go to trial. If convicted, he could face the death penalty or life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem prosecutors had was they still didn't know where Brad was. As preparations for trial began, the investigation into Bachmeier continued. They looked into his history as a police officer and found he had a troubled past.
Oh, what a shock. What? You don't say.
Even though he'd been cleared in the shooting of Guadalupe Rios, his family steadfastly believed he'd been unarmed the night he was killed, and the rifle had been placed at the scene after he was shot.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI was asked to look into the case, and I couldn't find any updates, so I'm not sure they pursued.
That'd be a very hard thing to take apart and figure out where the gun came from.
Right, yeah, yep. I would wish for Rios's, because I wouldn't be surprised at all that he was framed,
Of course he was. Like, who?
Why?
Who cares what he's doing at 3 a.m. at a gas station? Just leave him alone. People are allowed to be at gas stations at 3 a.m.
Yep.
If they're not doing weird shit, just roll on by, officer.
Yep. But you will be really surprised to find out that Bachmeier is also racist. And
what? Just inventing like Latino men to frame for arson?
Yep.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Yep.
I hadn't caught on to that at all.
No, I know. You're a little slow.
God.
So yeah, the family believes. Okay. So the FBI was asked to look into the case. He had been reprimanded once for using foul language with a citizen, another time for throwing a road flare at a car during a traffic accident.
See, that would be me. Like, that's why I could not. I mean, there's endless reasons that I could not be a police officer, but I would end up throwing flares at folks.
Seriously.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, kind of as like a prank, as a goof. Most of them, they'd be like, no, Courtney, you can't. Just be like, watch this, whoop, like their window be open and crack and just slide it in there. I'd be like, no, it's deadly and dangerous. It's super illegal.
Like, but I've got the power. I could do the funny pranks.
But it's pretty funny, don't you think, guys? God.
In 1993, he was accused of bigotry and racism while investigating a graffiti complaint. As they looked into the arson case more, investigators also discovered that the man who allegedly helped Brad was the master and the mastermind of the house fire, Jesus Hernandez, didn't exist. For sure didn't exist. Mm-hmm. It looked like Bachmeier had just made him up.
Yep. God, I mean, once again, like, you could have framed an actual person. You could have set this up, and like, I'm so glad he didn't. I'm so glad there's not a real Hernandez out there, like, getting framed for arson. But what a dumbass.
Yeah, total dumbass. Then, at the end of January 1997, 7 months after Brad went missing, hikers in the Cougar Mountain Park area came across human remains. Mm-hmm. Only around 20% of the bones were recovered, as they had been scattered by animals, but one of the bones found was a leg bone with a metal rod that was surgically attached. Mm-hmm. They also found a red, white, and blue cast identical to the one that Brad had on his leg when he went missing.
Oh, buddy.
DNA testing was able to confirm the remains belonged to Brad Wren.
I'm so glad they found him.
Yep. So Bachmeier's trial began on May 5th, 1997. Prosecutors told the jury that Bachmeier had decided to burn his house down in order to get the insurance money. He had a long-time dream of becoming a professional bowler.
Oh, what a shocker also. What a shocker.
Needed the money to start his professional bowling career.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Get a sponsor, bro. Just
so many things.
So many things.
To try and throw investigators, he made it look like an act of revenge against him. When investigators didn't buy Bachmeier's story and started to turn up the heat on him, he decided to find someone to blame the fire on. Brad Wren happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Oh, God.
He was also
psycho.
I know. He was also on crutches with a broken leg and suffered a traumatic brain injury, which made him a very easy target.
That's just disgusting. And, like, what is his life? What is Bachmeier's life? Like, he just sits in his house and, like, like
his fucking pig statues.
Oh, God. What a terrible, awful existence.
Yes.
Just,
he
like,
looks exactly like you would expect him to. And with his... I'll get screenshots of the prints that were his precious prints and pig statuettes. But it's like... It's just exactly what you expect from a guy like him.
Talks to his dead mother.
Preciouses. Yeah.
Total preciouses and talks to his dead mother. And it's so disturbing to think about. That's so weird that people just have those lives and they're like, how am I going to get this money? And then just come up with this cockamamie is the word for the story.
Yes. Well, he was a 25-year veteran in the police force in the late 90s. Like, huge pension. You know, like, he could have just not done any of this and been, like, able to become
just
a
retire and just
bowl.
Yeah. Right. You don't need to, like, get $100,000 to start your... Like, what do you even need? Really nice shoes? I mean, like, what does that even mean? Money to travel the circuit? Idea. Like, I'm sure there are expenses, but Nothing that your pension couldn't cover, bro.
Seriously.
And they get like triple, double, triple, quadruple pensions and shit. Like, get out of here.
Yep.
Gross.
Yep. So gross. There was never any evidence that Bachmeier brought Brad to the station the day he disappeared. After getting Brad to sign the false confession, he killed him in the back of the police car and dumped his body in the Cougar Mountain Park, leaving a trail of blood behind him.
Poor Brad. God.
Yeah. And they think that, he had signed the first 3 pages, but not the 4th. And they think that he just somehow coerced or forced Brad into signing the papers. And then Bachmeier brought the papers home and did the confession, but didn't have him sign enough papers to complete the stupid ass story. And so that's why the 4th page wasn't signed.
Totally.
It took the jury only 6 hours to find Mathis Bachmeier guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
Surprised it took that long, honestly.
Right. Bachmeier is now 74 years old and is serving his time at the Monroe Correctional. Bachmeier is now 74 years old and is serving his time at the Monroe Correctional Complex in Monroe, Washington. Brad Wren's mother, Shirley, wants people to remember that despite his troubled past, Brad was a victim. Quote, I don't want people to forget he was a victim, she said. He couldn't walk or get away. He was helpless.
Yeah. Yep. That was nasty shit.
Yep. And that is the pig statuette story of a decade. This is our case of Mathis Bachmeier and the murder of James Bradley.
I am flabbergasted. I mean, I love when people are that stupid because it's just open and a shut. But still, what WT heck, guys? Why? How? It's so strange. It is so strange what people do and what they get away with. If anybody has a Netflix subscription right now, you've probably watched The Tinder Swindler. You've probably watched The Bad Vegan or whatever it's called. Like, it is remarkable what people say and do, and it works.
Yes.
So thank God this guy didn't. I mean, he murdered a human being and probably another human being and God knows how many other human beings, but man.
Yeah.
We got to wisen up. We need to just use your heads, like employ a little critical thinking, people. What is going on?
Yeah, it's so crazy.
It's so crazy.
All
it's so crazy.
His bowling career.
Yuck. Good one, and also no thank you.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about it?
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.